This is Dev AI, focusing on newest developments in AI and legal space. Please subscribe to my channel. Last month, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, in face of the artificial intelligence boom, sat in front of members of Congress, urging them to regulate artificial intelligence. As lawmakers on the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee asked 30-year-old tech mogul about the nature of his business, Altman argued that the AI industry could be dangerous and that the government needs to step in. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong, as Altman articulated, and they want to be vocal about that. How government should regulate artificial intelligence is in general a hot topic, increasing urgency in countries around the world. As the advantage has reached levels, the general public really feels that it threatens to upend even entire industries. The European Union has been working on regulation around the issue for a while, but in the US, the regulatory process is just getting started. American lawmakers' initial moves, several digital rights experts said, did not inspire much confidence. Many of the senators appeared to accept the AI's industry ambitious predictions as fact and trust its leaders to act in good faith. So necessarily they mentioned that this is really the chance for them to really tell how to specifically get this right. As Senator John Kennedy really said, and they really have to talk in plain English and really outline what rules they want to have implemented. And much of the discussion about artificial intelligence really has revolved around futuristic concerns about the technology becoming sentient and turning against humanity, rather than impact the AI is already having. Specifically, increasing the surveillance, intensifying discrimination, or potentially weakening labor rights and creating mass information. If lawmakers and government agencies repeat the same mistakes they did while attempting to regulate social media platforms, experts warn, the AI industry will become similarly entrenched in society with potentially even more disastrous consequences. The companies are really leading the charge in the rapid development of AI systems, and these are the same companies that have been called before Congress for antitrust violation, for violation of existing law and information harms over the past several decades. This is a very important part that was outlined by Sarah Myers West, which is the managing director of the AI Now Institute, a research organization studying the societal impact of the technology. And this in particular implied that they're given a path to experiment in the Wild West for systems that others already know that they are capable of causing widespread harm to the general overall public. The budding relationship between lawmakers and the AI industry echoes the way big tech companies like Meta and Twitter have previously worked with federal and local US governments to craft regulation, a dynamic that rights groups said waters down legislation to the benefit of these companies. In 2020, Washington State, for example, passed the country's first bill regulating facial recognition. But this was written by a state senator who was also a Microsoft employee and drew criticism for civil rights groups for lacking key protections. In the end, they end up with rules that give them a lot of room to basically create self-regulation mechanisms that don't hamper the business interest. And this was, as I said, outlined by Mehtab Khan, which is an associate research scholar at the Yale Information Society project. Conversations in the European Union about AI are far more advanced. The EU is in the midst of negotiating the AI Act, proposed legislation that would seek to limit some use of the technology and would be the first law on AI by a major regulator. While many civil society groups point to some weakness of the draft legislation, including a limited approach to banning biometric data collection, they agree it's a much more cohesive starting point than what is currently being discussed in the United States. Including the draft legislation are prohibitions on high-risk AI applications like predictive policing and facial recognition, a development advocates attribute to the years-long conversation leading up to the proposal. They have implied they were quite lucky that a lot of things were put on the agenda before even this AI hype and generative AI ChatGPT boom happened. And this was outlined by Sarah Chander, which is a senior policy advisor in the international advocacy organization European Digital Rights. The European Parliament is expected to vote on the proposal on June 14th. Although the center-right European People's Party has pushed back against this aggressively, specifically when it relates to a total ban on tools like facial recognition, there's in general a feeling of optimism that there are certain prohibitions in terms of predictive policing and emotion recognition as well as biometric categorization. Nevertheless, there's a lot of finer details that still have to continue for the better part of the next year, specifically after the parliamentary vote has happened. But even in the EU, the recent generative AI hype cycle and concerns about the dystopian future have been drawing lawmakers' attention away from the harms affecting people today. Specifically, ChatGPT muddies the water very much in terms of the types of harms they are actually talking about. And the question is really, what are the most present harms and for whom are they really the most substantial to have an impact on? And the OpenAI logo is seen on the mobile phone in front of a computer screen displaying the ChatGPT home screen. This allows us really to determine that in general lack of wide-reaching regulation in the AI Act, the proposals were far-reaching enough to make Altman tell reporters that a company would cease operating if it couldn't comply with operations and the specific regulation. Nevertheless, Altman walked back the statement the next day that in general there's no plan to leave, but there's in general an opposition to the AI Act that he wants to push back against any laws that would constrain the business. And the challenge that really arises is that they ask for regulation that they like and not the regulation that are really good for society in general. Now, with the lack of urgency from US lawmakers administration, general digital rights experts are looking at existing law and efforts at the state level to put guardrails on AI. New York, for example, will require companies to conduct annual audits for bias in the automated hiring system, as well as notify candidates when these systems are being used and give applicants the option to request the data collected on them. There are also several existing laws that may prove useful that are outlined by researchers. For example, the Federal Trade Commission's algorithmic disgorgement enforcement tool, for instance, allows the agency to order companies to destroy datasets or algorithms they have built that are found to have been created using illicitly acquired data. The FTC also has regulation around the deception that allow the agency to police overstated marketing claims about what a system is capable of. Antitrust laws too may be an effective intervention if the firms building and controlling the training of these large language models begin to engage in anti-competitive behavior. And privacy legislation on the state level could also serve to provide reasonable protection against companies scraping the internet for data to train AI systems. And there's in general no good conscience to predict that the federal legislation is going to come up with something good in the near future. This is Def AI, focusing on the newest developments in AI and the legal space. Please subscribe to my channel, put any questions or feedback.